You did not choose your dog. Not really. You walked into a shelter or a breeder or a parking lot where someone was giving away puppies, and something happened that you cannot fully explain. Your eyes met. Something clicked. You went home with a dog. But here is what nobody tells you about that moment. Your dog's ancestors made that choice first. Tens of thousands of years before you were born, before cities, before farming, before written language, a wild animal decided to trust a human. And that single decision changed the course of two species forever. The story of why dogs chose humans is one of the strangest and most debated mysteries in all of science. And the answer, when you actually look at the evidence, will make you see every dog you have ever loved in a completely different way. To understand it, you have to go back roughly 15,000 years. Some researchers push that number to 40,000. The exact date is still argued over in laboratories and fossil sites across the world. But the core fact is this. At some point during the Upper Paleolithic, when your ancestors were still hunters living in small bands, wolves began to approach human camps. Not the other way around. Wolves approached humans. Think about what that means. Wolves were apex predators. Fast, intelligent, built for survival. They had no reason to trust a creature that killed things with sharpened sticks. And yet, something drew them in. The leading theory, championed by researchers like Brian Hare at Duke University, is that it started with food. Human camps produced waste. Bones, scraps, the leftovers of a kill. For a wolf bold enough to get close, that waste was a free meal. The wolves that were slightly less fearful of humans, the ones that could tolerate proximity without fleeing or attacking, had a survival advantage. They ate better, they lived longer, they had more pups. Over generations, natural selection did something extraordinary. It filtered the wolf population near human camps, selecting again and again for animals that could handle the stress of human presence. The boldest survivors bred with each other. And slowly, across hundreds of generations, a new kind of animal began to emerge. One that did not merely tolerate humans, one that was drawn to them. This is what makes dogs unlike any other domesticated animal. You domesticated sheep and cattle and horses through force and confinement. You selected them for traits you wanted. But dogs, in the early stages at least, may have domesticated themselves. They chose the proximity. They drove the selection pressure. Your ancestors did not reach out to wolves. Wolves reached out to your ancestors. Researcher Dmitry Belyaev ran one of the most famous experiments in the history of animal behavior to test this idea. Starting in 1959 inches Soviet Russia, he began selectively breeding wild silver foxes, choosing only the individuals that showed the least fear and aggression toward humans. He did not breed for appearance. He did not breed for intelligence. He bred only for one trait, tolerance of humans. Within just a few generations, something astonishing happened. The foxes began to change not just behaviorally, but physically. They developed floppy ears, curly tails, spotted coats. They began to whine and wag and seek human attention the way dogs do. Belaev's experiments suggested that selecting for tameness triggers a cascade of physical and behavioral changes all at once, what scientists now call domestication syndrome. It was proof that the path from wild animal to companion could happen faster and more automatically than anyone had imagined. But tameness alone does not explain what dogs actually became. Because dogs did not just stop fearing humans. They developed something far stranger. They developed the ability to read your mind. Not literally, but almost. Researcher Michael Tomasello at the Max Planck Institute spent years studying how different animals understand human communication. He ran a simple test. Hide food under one of two cups, then point at the correct cup. Which animals can follow the point and find the food? Chimpanzees, your closest genetic relatives, largely fail this test. They do not naturally follow a human point. But dogs pass it almost every time. Even puppies that have never been trained pass it. Even puppies raised without human contact pass it. Dogs are born understanding human gesture in a way that no other animal on earth can match. They look where you look, they follow your eyes, they read your face for information about the world. This is not something you trained into them. This is something that happened over thousands of years of living alongside you. The dogs that could read human signals survived better. They found the food. They avoided the danger. They were kept, fed, brought along on hunts, and generation after generation, the ability deepened. What began as a survival strategy became something that looks, from the inside of it, exactly like love. Because here is the part that changes everything. It is not just behavioral, it is chemical. When you look into a dog's eyes, something happens in both of your brains. Oxytocin levels rise. Oxytocin is the same neurochemical released between a mother and her newborn child. It is the bonding hormone. It is what makes attachment feel like attachment and not just proximity. Researcher Takefumi Kikusui at Azabu University in Japan measured oxytocin levels in both dogs and their owners during extended eye contact and found that both species experienced a significant rise. The dog's gaze triggered the human's bonding response, and the human's return gaze triggered the dog's. A feedback loop of attachment that had been building for 15,000 years had encoded itself into the biology of both species. Your dog is not pretending to love you. Your dog is not performing loyalty because it has no choice. The chemistry is real. The bond is real. It was built, slowly and improbably, by thousands of generations of animals who chose proximity over safety, who traded the wild for the warmth of a fire, and who, in doing so, became something the world had never seen before. But there is a darker side to this story that most people never hear. Not every wolf that approached a human camp was welcomed. Not every dog that came to exist was treated with kindness. For most of human history, dogs occupied a complicated space somewhere between tool and companion. They guarded camps and pulled sleds and herded animals and hunted alongside their humans. But they were also sometimes eaten, especially in lean times, in cultures across Asia, the Americas, and the Pacific. The relationship was not always soft, it was not always mutual. It was, for most of its history, a transaction. And yet the bond persisted. Through every century of hard use and inconsistent treatment, dogs kept choosing humans. They kept orienting toward human faces. They kept responding to human emotion. They kept sleeping at the entrance of human shelters, keeping watch through the night. Why? Because the selection pressure never stopped. The dogs that bonded most deeply with humans were the ones that were kept, fed, protected. The ones that didn't bond were abandoned or killed. The warmth of the human relationship was not just emotionally appealing, it was a survival advantage, generation after generation, for 15,000 years. What emerged from all of that is the animal sitting at your feet right now. It is the most successful large predator on Earth. If you measure success by population and geographic spread, there are an estimated 1 billion dogs on the planet. They live on every continent. They have adapted to deserts and Arctic tundra and tropical rainforests. They have threaded themselves so deeply into human civilization that you cannot find a culture on Earth without them. And they did it by choosing you, not your species in the abstract, not humanity as a concept, but the specific human in front of them, the one whose smell they memorized, whose footstep they recognize from across a house, whose sadness they can detect before you have said a single word. Research has shown that dogs can identify human emotional states from facial expressions alone, can distinguish between happy and angry faces, and will adjust their own behavior accordingly. They are, in a very real sense, students of you. They have spent their entire lives studying one subject, the human being they live with. So the next time your dog looks up at you with that particular expression, the one that asks nothing and offers everything, remember what you are looking at. You are looking at the end result of one of the longest and most improbable experiments in natural history. A wild predator that decided tens of thousands of years ago to trust a strange two-legged creature with sharp sticks, and kept making that choice generation after generation until the choice became biology, until the choice became love. You did not choose your dog chose you. And it turns out that choice was made long before either of you existed.